Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Rare Candy. Here today we are back with another Sword and Shield deck profile. This time we're going to be taking a look at the new Zacian V with Lucario and Melmetal GX. So a couple of weeks ago we actually did post the ADP variant of this deck. So if you guys are interested in a more aggressive take on Zacian V, I'll have a link down below in the description for you guys to check out that one. But I thought there was a lot of merit to also running this with Lucario and Melmetal GX, and both versions have definitely been having their strengths and weaknesses, and both generally been performing pretty well for me. So I definitely wanted to explore this idea as well on the channel. So like I said, if you do want to check out the other one, I will have a link down below in the description to that. And also too, this is the same list that was featured in our recent testing rounds video. So if you guys want to see how this deck looks in action as well, you can go check that out. I'll have a link below in the description to that one too. But let's get into the deck and see how this one is going to look. So up first for the deck, we have 4 copies of Jirachi, our main consistency boosting Pokemon. So of course you guys are probably plenty familiar with this guy by now, but once during a turn before you attack, you may put Jirachi asleep and get one of the trainer cards you find in the top 5 cards of your deck. So just going to be a nice way to chain our combo pieces. We're actually pretty item reliant in this deck for getting set up, so Jirachi is very good at helping finding those combo pieces that we need. So up next from there, we have the main attacker himself. We have 3 copies of Zacian V in the deck. So Zacian V, a new Pokemon V from Sword and Shield. Definitely, I think, one of the best cards coming out. 220 HP, gives up 2 prizes. Has this ability here. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 3 cards of your deck and you may attach any number of metal energies you find there to this Pokemon. And you may put the other cards into your hand and then your turn ends. So basically, if there's 3 cards there, you get to get some extra energy attachments, and if there's not, it's just a draw 3, end your turn. So especially with like the new first turn rules, this is such a good ability if you happen to be going first in a game, or even if you're going second, it's not that bad. If you can't find all of the pieces you need to like cobble together an attack, you can just kind of sit back and chill with Intrepid Sword here and just set up your Zacian Vs or refill your hand a little bit. Also, sometimes good maybe in the mid to late game if you get hit with like a really hard reset stamp or something and you need to just kind of take a turn to rebuild your hand and get some more resources. This can be a nice kind of fallback maybe in the mid to late game, but hopefully you don't have to do that. Mainly good in the early games to set up our Zacians. And then just has 1 attack for 3 metal, does 230, and then this Pokemon can't attack on your next turn. 230, really good number. You're going to knock out all of the base form Pokemon V that are getting printed. You're going to knock out any of the non-tag team basic GXs that are in the game. Even the stage 1 GXs that are still in the game, you can knock out most of those as well. So just a really nice number to hit for. And 3 metal energy normally would be pretty bad to get in play, but thanks to, of course, the new metal saucer, we can easily get this guy up and running as soon as possible. So this is definitely our main attacker in the deck. But the next key card we have is going to be 1 copy of Lucario and Melmetal GX. So this is a tag team Pokemon, 260 HP, gives up 3 prizes, and we're playing it primarily for its GX attack, Full Metal Wall. For a colorless energy, you reduce the damage done to your metal Pokemon by 30 for the rest of the game, and if you have an additional energy, you discard all energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So we're primarily using this for the first effect to reduce our damage, and we're basically just trying to tank hits with our Zacians in this particular list. So one thing that is nice though, with Metal Saucer in the format, we can actually pretty reliably get the second effect going as soon as possible too, if we do need to discard our opponent's energy. So primarily just playing this for the GX attack here. I think this might look a little bit weird as just a 1 count, especially since like the ADP versions of this deck are going to be playing, I think on average, 2 ADPs, maybe 3 in some instances. But I kind of like just the 1 count here because unlike ADP, you really don't want to attack with this after you get off your GX attack. ADP on the other hand, Ultimate Ray is still a good attack and you can get good value out of that. Whereas these other attacks on Lucario Melmetal, they're just kind of okay. I guess like they're not particularly great. So ideally after we use Full Metal Wall, we don't really want to use this thing anymore in the game. So that's why we were playing the kind of low count of just the 1. But if you do want to run a second to ensure you don't prize it, I understand that as well. But since we're not as reliant on this GX attack as we are with something like Altered Creation, that's why I'm going with the lower count right now. Up next from there, we have 1 copy of Duskmane Necrozma. This is a card that we really haven't see a lot of play in a long time. But it's a promo card that we had, I think it came out around the time of Ultra Prism or Forbidden Light. I forget which, but sometime around then. But we're playing this mainly for its first attack here. For just 1 metal energy, you get to do 60 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon EX or GX in play. Doesn't seem too great, but the reason we're playing this is because it actually makes our math work out really nicely for tag teams in particular. So we can do 230 with Zacian V, and let's say they just retreat to the bench. We can use Duskmane to just snipe them on the bench, take 3 prizes that way. So that can be good as well. It also does have another attack that's not too bad. 2 metal on a Carlos, 100 plus 100 more if your opponent has exactly 1 prize left. I believe it's your opponent. It's you or your opponent, but I forget which. Yeah, if it's your opponent, that's what I thought. So mainly for the first attack, but the second attack can also be kind of decent as well. Same attack cost as Zacian, only gives it 1 prize, but yeah, mainly for the first attack though. Up next from there, we're actually playing a 1/1 Galarian Berserker line as well. So this is a card I've been going back and forth on lately. But the reason for its inclusion is actually for other Zacian decks that play Metal Frying Pan, in particular ADP ones. If we play against an ADP variant that plays Frying Pan, we're going to be really in a bad position because we actually can't one-shot opposing Zacians, and they might potentially be able to one-shot us depending if we have our own Frying Pans. So Berserker here, it's going to increase our damage by our Metal Pokemon by 20. So that means we're going to be hitting for 250 with Zacian V. If our opponent has a Frying Pan on their own Zacian V, we can still hit for 220, taking a 1-hit knockout. The reason I'm saying I'm going back and forth on this is because we actually don't have the good Galarian Meowth just yet. There's one that Japan has where it's like, discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for a Berserker, put it in your hand. So I think once that comes out, I will probably commit to this line no matter what. But for the moment, this can kind of be... it's not as consistent as what Japan has access to. But like I said, the reason is to make sure that we can one-shot opposing Zacians and give ourselves an edge in the mirror match, specifically against the ADP versions that might happen to run Frying Pan. So that's going to be for that. Going on from there, we have just a couple of other support Pokemon. We have 1 copy of Absol in the deck. So Absol is just going to be there to increase our opponent's retreat cost by 1. So another card that could potentially give us an edge in mirror matches. So it's going to make their Jirachis a little bit more clunky to retreat. It's going to force them to need energy in addition to an escape board to retreat them. And basically the whole theme of the deck is we are a much more defensive variant of Zacian. We're trying to reduce our opponent's damage, make it harder for them to retreat. We have healing options in the deck as well. And Absol is just another way that kind of makes it harder for our opponent to play the game sometimes. Up next from there, we have 1 copy of Oranguru. This is a new card from Sword and Shield. Really been enjoying this one. It's been in a bunch of my early lists so far, but it has this really cool ability. You can replace a card in your hand with the top card of your deck. So that's really cool because let's say you play a Professor's Research and you whiff the card that you need for turn. Well, if you have a Oranguru, you can put 1 card back and get that next card on top of your deck and dig effectively like an 8th card off of your turn for using your supporter. So really been liking Oranguru. Also comes nicely with Professor's Research and also Marnie, just because if you have something in your hand you don't want to discard, you can just put it on top of your deck and draw back into it whenever you play one of those supporters as well. So been a huge fan of Oranguru, one of my favorite cards that's come out in Sword and Shield. And then from there we have 1 copy of Dedenne GX to round out this list. And so Dedenne, pretty obvious inclusion here. Whenever you bench it, you discard your hand, draw 6, so we can pitch away Metal Energies to get back with Metal Saucer, or if we just whiff the combo piece that we might be looking for, we can dig a little bit deeper in a turn. Now I will actually confess this is a card that is one that I am going back and forth on including, just because with this particular deck we're basically trying to deny our opponent taking knockouts. We're making it hard for them to retreat, we're making it hard for them to take knockouts on our attackers, and Dedenne is a little bit of a liability, so you might want to even consider cutting this potentially. There's definitely a variety of different tech cards that I'm looking at for this. Shadowbox Mimikyu is near the top of my list. I think Dedenne could maybe even be replaced for that. But definitely if you are considering making cuts, Dedenne is a card I'm currently looking at. But nevertheless, it's still nice to have the option to bail yourself out of a dead hand if you are currently stuck with one. So up next from there, we have 3 copies of the new Professor's Research. So this is going to be basically like a Sycamore Juniper reprint. Just discard your hand and draw 7. Really like this, especially because we're primarily like an all basic deck, so we usually don't have like Pokemon that we have to worry about discarding most of the time. We can pitch away Metal Energies, and it's just a really aggressive form of draw power to help us hit whatever we might need here. Up next from there, though, we have 2 copies of Marnie as well. Another new card from Sword and Shield. I think kind of goes nicely with the theme of this deck. We are more defensive, and Marnie is a disruptive supporter, so it kind of goes hand in hand with our strategy. So each player shuffles their hand, puts it at the bottom of their deck. You draw 5, your opponent draws 4. So we're making it harder for them to do damage, harder for them to retreat, lowering their hand size. Just another way to help ensure that our Pokemon don't get knocked out. Up next from there, we have 2 copies of Cynthia and Caitlin. So one of our tag team supporters in the deck. Of course, put a supporter from a discard back in your hand, but you can't get back a Cynthia and Caitlin or a card you discard with Cynthia and Caitlin. And then the secondary effect, you can discard a card from your hand and draw 3 as well. So we can pitch away Metal Energies maybe to get back an additional supporter. We play Tag Call in this list, so this is nice. We can get a draw supporter off of Tag Call if need be as well. And up next from there, we have 2 copies of Mallow and Lana to round out our supporters in this deck here. So Mallow and Lana is just another defensive card that we're going to have access to here in this deck. Mallow and Lana, you switch your active with one of your bench Pokemon, or if you want to fulfill the secondary effect, you discard 2 cards from hand and heal 120 in the process. So, reducing damage with Lucario Melmetal, Mallow Lana is going to allow us to heal. Another way we can just tank and hopefully don't get knocked out in the game. Up next from there, we have 2 copies of Chaotic Swell. This is going to be our stadium of choice. There's really not a particular stadium I think this deck really wants in particular. Like, there's really nothing I can think of that specifically helps this deck. Maybe like Shrine of Punishment or Power Plant potentially, but I think Chaotic Swell is generally going to be a bit better. So whenever a player plays a stadium from their hand, to remove your Chaotic Swell, it gets discarded as well. So this is another defensive card that we have in our toolbox just to make it harder for our opponent to carry out their strategy. Up next, we have 4 copies of Quick Ball. So you guys are probably getting plenty familiar with this card by now. New item card, you discard a card from your hand. Search your deck for a basic Pokemon. We can pitch away Metal Energies to get back with Metal Saucer as well. So it has kind of a dual utility in this deck. And of course from there, we do have 4 copies of Metal Saucer as well. One of the main cards that really enables Zacian to be so good. So you attach a Metal Energy from discard to one of your benched Metal Pokemon. So pretty much like the old Dark Patch, the old Aqua Patch, but now for Metal Pokemon. And this means we don't have to play something like Magnezone as an example to accelerate Metal Energies. We can just play an item which is going to be generally a lot more consistent, which is really nice. Up next from there, we actually have 3 copies of Pokemon Catcher. This is a card we haven't seen in quite some time that is getting a reprint in the new Sword and Shield set. So Pokemon Catcher, it's flip a coin, if heads, switch your opponent's active with one of their benched Pokemon. So one reason I'm playing Catcher right now is because we are relying on Professor's research a lot of the time, and it's an easily burnable card. Like, if we have to discard our hand anyways, we can easily play Pokemon Catcher. We don't have to worry about having, like, a second piece of it, like a custom catcher in hand. So it's just a lot easier to make use of than something like a custom catcher would. So it is a coin flip, which means it does work a little less consistently, but if you're playing 4 custom catchers already in a deck, you're only going to be able to gust something twice anyways. And with 3 Pokemon Catchers, you're going to get 1 to 2 gusting effects out of this whenever you flip heads anyway. So on average, it's going to work approximately as consistently as a custom catcher would. From there, we do have 1 copy of Great Catcher as well. I was playing 4 Pokemon Catcher, but I kind of like playing the 1 Great Catcher just to have a guaranteed catcher effect at some point if we do need it. So I think gusting effects just in general are something I haven't really taken a hard position on in the new format, just because with a Ranguru in the mix, I do think custom catcher actually is a consideration because we can put custom catcher pieces on top of our deck to make sure we don't discard them with something like Professor's Research. So definitely feel free to experiment, guys. I definitely don't like the idea of playing more than 1 Great Catcher, I will say that, but I think either play 4 custom catcher, 4 Pokemon Catcher, or the line we have here, the 3 Pokemon Catcher, 1 Great Catcher split. Like I said, something I'm still personally experimenting with. See what works best for you, but I think this deck has a lot of options in terms of what you want to go with for your gusting effects. Up next from there, we have 4 copies of Switch in the deck. So unfortunately, with Zacian V, we can't attack after we use its attack Brave Blade. So we're going to need switching effects like Mallow Lana or just plain old Switch. We also, of course, are playing a Jirachi engine, so Switch just pairs so nicely with Jirachi as well. Up next from there, we have 2 copies of a Skateboard in the deck. So Skateboard is going to be primarily for our Jirachis, of course, going to reduce our retreat cost by 1, and allow us to retreat through special conditions like sleep and paralysis. Next up from there, we have 2 copies of Tag Call in the deck as well. So it's another search card that we have. You get a search deck for 2 tag team cards, put them in your hand, so we can grab something like Lucario Melmetal, but we can also grab, of course, Cynthia and Caitlin and Mallow and Lana as well. Up next from there, we are going to have 3 copies of Metal Frying Pan. This is going to be another way to reduce damage in the deck here. So with this and Lucario Melmetal, we are going to be reducing the damage to our metal Pokemon by 60, which is pretty substantial in a lot of cases. And also, it is going to eliminate our weakness as well. So we do have a lot of fire Pokemon that are still good in the game, like Blacephalon GX, Reshizard, Breakzard, even the baby Blacephalon, I think, gains a big buff from Sword and Shield. This is going to make sure we can, survive hits a little bit easier and just make it harder for our opponent to take knockouts against us. And then from there, 1 copy of Reset Stamp to round out our trainer cards. Another disruption option that we have here. So our opponent shuffles their hand back into their deck and draws equal to the amount of prize cards they have. So between Stamp, Frying Pan, Lucario Melmetal, Mallow Lana, etc., we have a lot of ways to disrupt our opponent and try to tank hits and not give up many prizes. And then going on to our energy, we have 3, 6, 9, 11 copies of Metal Energy in total to round out the list. So between these and Metal Saucer, we basically have like 15 energy in deck effectively. So with that, that's going to wrap up our look here at the Lucario Melmetal variant of Zacian V. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we did cover the ADP version as well, link in the description. I think both of these actually have a lot of promise and their own unique strengths and weaknesses. Both I think are definitely worth experimenting with. I've been liking both a lot. It does remain to be seen which one is going to come out on top once Sword and Shield is legal for play, but I think both these archetypes are super, super strong, and definitely you guys should be putting testing time into them and trying to figure out what's going to work best for you. But also comment down below in the description too, what do you think? Do you think ADP is the better way to run Zacian, or is it Lucario Melmetal? Sound off below, let us know where you guys are at right now. But if you guys did enjoy this content today, feel free to like and subscribe, and consider supporting this channel as well by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or by picking up some merch from our online store, rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.